Airspeed limitations. There is nothing forgiving.
Answering the last week.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Brian. And then we'll be able to see the agenda on the screens in front of us.
Oh, I guess that would help us. Power right here.
I'll give you a second to figure out your screens and then I'll start of our meeting.
How about that?
Screens on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. All right, everybody, thank you for being here this evening for our in-person June 5th Airport Commission meeting. And Brian, we'll start with roll call.
Okay, Commissioner Wubin, actually for all members of the commission, when I say your name, signify by saying aye or present. Commissioner Wubin?
Present.
Commissioner Randall?
Present.
Commissioner Schwartz?
Present.
Commissioner Myers?
Present.
Chair Lorman?
Present.
Okay, and Commissioners Young and Nye are absent and excused.
All right, thank you very much. Proof of posting notices.
Yes, the notice for tonight's meeting was properly posted at City Hall, the outside lobby window, and on the city's website and email listserv, and also believe it was posted at the airport.
It was. Great, thank you. Let's do some introductions because we have a new commission member here tonight, Ryan Wubin. And Ryan, feel free to tell us anything we'd like to know about your experience that has brought you here.
I am a hangar owner out at the airport on Alpha Lane. I have a 182 that I operate. I've been operating out of Maury for, well, ever since the new Maury developed in 2006, I think, is when I got that. Well, when I got my hangar. And I've owned a variety of aircraft out at Maury, and I'm a citizen of the city of Middleton, and I am I work at the University of Wisconsin with the UW Med Flight program.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Appreciate it, and appreciate your volunteerism and time that you'll put into this committee over the next 2 years.
All right.
Thank you so much. Okay, we'll move to public comment. Public comments limited to 3 minutes. And if we have anybody online and in person that would like to speak, if you're in person, you can go up to the microphone and identify yourself. And if you're online, Brian will be watching that. You'll raise your hand, you'll let Brian know, and Brian will acknowledge you and you'll be able to speak. So we'll give Brian a second to check everything over.
I think we'll get to go with comments.
Okay, great. Go ahead, state your name, where you live, address, and continue.
My name is Jeff Russell, and I'm a pilot and hangar owner of Delta Lane, Middleton Maury Airport. I think I've been there since about 2009. Have a couple airplanes based there. I should say 1.2 there. I'm only partner. But I'm here to speak tonight. Well, I'm actually a town of the West City, or the town of Westport. I'm not of the city middle. But I'm here to speak tonight on the turf ops agenda item. Just want to show my support for recreating the turf op area that used to be there. And I have a little bit of a background in that I'm also a board of directors of Recreational Aviation Company. So I've worked on things just like this. In fact, on this very issue, there's a change in the advisory circular that formally recognized these areas. This came out with the 15D revision of it a couple of years ago. And that was an item that I advocated for on behalf of pilots to actually have the FAA start to formally recognize these areas that have been around the country. At the time, I was really into it and looking into these. I discovered more than about 13 or 14 from around the state of Wisconsin. And that was not an exhaustive search. That was just kind of looking at it, crowdsourcing with friends. So they're pretty prevalent. Around the country, there's hundreds of these things. It's just a turf area, the lateral extension typically of the existing paved runway. And, you know, as of a couple, 2-3 years ago now, the FAA recognized. They're areas that are preferred, typically preferred by tailwheel aircraft. It's a more forgiving surface because it's not as grabby on the tires and doesn't tend to destabilize the directionality of the aircraft. So just recently, one of these areas was created in Manitowish Waters, Wisconsin. So 2 years ago, they had a hangar project in Manitowish Waters, and they had to get rid of some dirt and fill they needed to remove. And so they, the airport chairman up there, said, "What do we do with this dirt?" So why don't we move it alongside the runway and actually reduce the pitch? So it still has a drainage grade, but they reduced the pitch. They created a turf operating area. And that was in conjunction with the airport engineering firm that was doing the work, and also had blessings of the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, Bureau of Aeronautics. So I have contacts up there. We can get into more information. I just talked with the airport commission chair a few days ago, and he gave me some more details, but it was really nothing more than establishing and starting to mold. So I think for here, we'll obviously ask the Department of Transportation what their thoughts on it are. And I think Rich and I chatted briefly about that. But up in Manitowish Waters, it's not marked, it's just an area that's there. It's use at your own risk. And it's mowed for use by aircraft.
Okay, well, thanks much. Appreciate your comments.
Right. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, Brian, no one else online identifying themselves? All right. Next item is commission organization, election of commission chair. And do we have any nominations? Does anybody want to nominate anybody as the chair?
Nominate Dave Norman.
I'll
Okay.
second that.
All right, and we have a second. Okay, so the way this works, Ryan is, as the chair, I'll state something that is for a motion. In this case, it would be the chair. Someone else from the commission would agree to that motion, or or in this case, a nomination, and then a second person would second it. And then after that, we vote. So I'll say, all those in favor of retaining Dave Lorman as the chair, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. So I can continue my job at this point. All right. Next item will be a similar process, and this time it'll be for the vice chair.
Mr. Chair, just for the
Oh.
clarity of the minutes, just asking the body, was there any other nominations for
Oh,
individuals for chair other than Mr. Lorman?
I don't want to, sorry about that.
Okay, and seeing no hands or no nominations. Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry.
So now the floor is closed for nominations, and now we vote for you, Dave.
Okay. Should we retake the vote? Okay. All those in favor of Dave Lorman as the chair, say aye.
Still in favor.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay, thanks. All right, let's try to get the process right for the next position, which would be election of the vice chair. Do we have any nominations for any of the body of the members?
I nominate David Schwartz for vice chair.
Okay, and I will second that. Do we have any other potential nominations or candidates? Okay, none. Now we can vote, Brian? Okay. All righty. All those in favor, if you so choose, David, to take the position as vice chair?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Otherwise, you can get told to do it. All those in favor of accepting David Schwartz, please state aye.
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? Great, thank you very much. Okay, next approval of the minutes. Basically what we do is, I've reviewed the minutes, Ryan, and if anybody has any corrections, comments, we state those now, Brian will simply make note of that, make adjustments. We don't have to vote on this. It's just a review and acceptance. I've reviewed the minutes, and I don't have any changes or edits. Anybody else? Great. Thank you very much. Chair's report. Let me start by with the Common Council did pass the ordinance to update the language for membership of the Airport Commission. So there were 2 readings, and that's just standard procedure for the city. So the drafted language is now an ordinance. The vote was a 3-6 vote, and the objections for the language ranged from a concern that the Airport Commission would perhaps be overweighted in the sense of representing aviators to some people thought the whole Chapter 2 of the City Ordinance Code should be rewritten for consistency. And it's just informational, not really discussion. I'm just passing it along and letting you know that, that information will be conveyed also to the chair of License and Ordinance. Maybe there is opportunity for the city to improve our ordinance code. Not our problem, but hey, it's always good to learn and improve what we can. Otherwise, I don't have anything specific in my report because most of what I have will be in our standing agenda. But I will leave space here for anything that Brian would like to bring us up to speed on that is informational.
Don't have anything that's an update other than the items that are on the agenda for discussion tonight. If I do, I'll make sure that they're ready and available for our next meeting.
Yeah. And just a little bit historically, Ryan, probably, the one thing that we're waiting on right now is getting some stuff through the it's right been through BOA, but now FAA, and just working on finishing up some paperwork with an airport layout plan. And there's ongoing work that we're doing regarding the RPZ on the south end of the turf runway, and that's all plays into that. So basically, we're just waiting on the FAA too. So if something comes up, typically Brian will pass that on. Manager's report.
Okay. Hopefully everyone can hear me. So from April 28th, 2025 to May 28th, 2025, we had 11 noise or low-flying aircraft reports by 7 individuals. 1 individual made 4. Everyone who wished, I did call back. I left messages and or spoke with them. There's a consistent desire to make sure that these reports are recorded and reported, which I do assure them that we are going to do. No apparent, in reviewing all of the reports, no apparent FAA violations were in order or happened. We will, as you notice, we're up a little bit from last month. People will have windows open now in the summer, so the noise will be more apparent. It's lighter later, so we'll be flying later. Also, there's construction at Madison, and one of the examiners that likes to do his check rides is now taking people from Madison over to our airport. So that means that the instructors at Wisconsin Aviation are coming over and using the facility more often than they had been in the past. No aircraft accidents or incidents on the field. And the mowing season continues. We're staying even with the grass. I don't think we ever get ahead of it. And we continue to host both community and aviation events in our conference from Middleton Garden Club met. The Visual Meteorological Conditions VMC Club met on May 8th. That's basically a safety seminar. group that they go through scenarios sent out by the Experimental Aircraft Association. Girl Scouts met May 18th. I presented a safety seminar on engines and components. That was May 22nd. We had about 20 in attendance. And then May 24, 25, the Wings to Fly event, we had 11 young people flew with volunteers. And I really have to thank all the people that volunteer and help out in those programs. Wings to Fly is attempting to find people that we don't normally see at the airport, women, people of color, and we're bringing them in, we're getting them exposed to aviation and showing them that there can be a career in this path, that many don't really know anything about it. Future events, Middleton Garden Club already hosted, and Women in Aviation also had a safety seminar, very well. We're going to have the controllers FAA safety seminar. So the Madison controllers, at least one or two of them, will come over and talk with pilots. It's always a very popular event. We host that in our hangar because there's more people than we can handle in the conference room. And the EA graciously lets me borrow their folding chairs, which makes life a little less expensive all the way around. And again, we're in the 100th anniversary of my grandfather starting flight training in the Madison area. Any questions? Yes.
Hi, Rich. First, thank you for this report. I have two questions. The first, because obviously I'm not a pilot, but I do have constituents who occasionally have questions about noise. If you could walk me through what a typical investigation for you looks like, that would be really helpful for me as I'm explaining to them each of the steps that you take when you do receive a complaint.
Okay, well, that's a good question. When I receive a complaint, some of them have addresses, some of them do not. If they have an address, now I can look at where that location is relative to the normal noise abatement procedure. For instance, we have a hill just to the north and east of the airport, where if we follow the noise abatement procedure, we should not be overflying. If I see that people are doing that, even though it's not an FAA violation, it is a violation of the voluntary noise abatement procedure. And I will try to identify those that are made that, ask why. I don't assume that any malfeasance. Sometimes you just, because of traffic, birds, whatever else, you have to deviate from the standard procedure. Sometimes it's just ignorance. If I don't have an address, I have a problem. If I have a time, obviously time, date, address, and ideally description of the aircraft, we can determine possibly who it was and what it was. And again, is it part of the noise abatement procedure? If I've got a call from a house that is located underneath the traffic pattern, well, then was that airplane considerably lower than normal? What was the condition? So I try to look at all of that. Some of the material we can go back and check the ADSB transponder records that come out. Typically speaking, it takes a fair bit of effort on my part to do that because we have to get in and actually look at the recordings, which I don't have easy access to. Then I tend not to do that unless it's something way outside of the norm. We often will I've had calls from someone who thought that the lawnmower that was mowing around their apartment was a helicopter that was coming over every time. I've also had calls from, honestly, a past airport commission member who thought that some jet was exceedingly low, and it turned out to be an F-16 underneath a high overcast. So the sound was echoing. So there's an awful lot that we need to take into account. So I look at all of that. I can understand people's frustration at times when they make reports and nothing seems to change. And I try to explain to them, well, this is the noise abatement procedure has been examined in detail by the FAA at least 4 times that I'm aware of. They call them congressionals. That's when someone gets the attention of someone in Congress. They send the note to the FAA, says, look into this for us. And every time it's come back that we follow that noise abatement procedure. We are doing everything we can to minimize their noise footprint. That said, people that have not learned at our place and may not have done their due diligence and they don't know the voluntary noise abatement procedure will do what they've been trained, which will put them lower and louder over people's homes. Normal procedure, let's say we're taking off to the west, is to start your turn in the neighborhood of 400 feet above ground level. That'll put us over homes at low altitude and high power. Our procedure is to turn, not runway heading, which would take us over homes, turn to the northwest, by about 30 degrees off the runway alignment, climb out over the fields, get to pattern altitude, throttle back, and then do your turn, minimizing our noise footprint. Now, this summer, we're looking at less performance because thinner air, hotter air is thinner, and humid air also degrades performance. So we will often get, these airplanes are flying over my house, and we haven't seen them, all winter. Well, that's because we're still going to that altitude before we turn, simply because that is the least or the smallest noise footprint over traffic or over homes. So I probably gave you an awful lot of information there, and I don't know if I answered your question, but the reality is I'll look at the case, and if it's something really unusual, I'll definitely do a lot more search. We had one case, well, I won't give details per se, other than often what we will see is when you go back into the inspection, checking it out, and getting the altitude readouts, that the aircraft was nowhere near as low as people had the perception of it being.
Height is difficult to judge from an angle.
Almost impossible from the ground, honestly.
Yeah, and I do appreciate it. You did answer my question, and my follow-up is, how much time does a typical investigation take you?
Again, if it's something that's fairly straightforward, let's say it hasn't happened recently, but at one time, anytime a jet would land from the east, we'd get a noise complaint. And it was very clear, professional pilots they load the instrument approach procedure, they follow the instrument approach procedure, come in and land. So I could easily check to see the profile. That would take me very little time. On the other hand, if it's something that is unusual, that makes me wonder, then I could spend, I think the most I've spent is about a half an hour per noise complaint. But typically speaking, I can get these done in 5 to 10 minutes typically.
Okay. Thanks, Rich. I appreciate it. That was question 1. And then question 2 was the Wings to Fly event.
Yes.
Which you organize as an airport.
Well, we support it.
Okay, support as an airport.
Yeah, retired airline captain Susan Schwab, that's her baby. She started it from scratch, and can't give her enough credit for it.
And just so I understand it, and I think so maybe perhaps members of the general public understand it.
Yeah.
How much does this charitable event cost to put together in term, if
I don't honestly know what.
assess a market rate for the pilot
Oh,
services
I
of
see.
the planes?
Yeah, I don't try to keep track of that.
Oh, I can tell you.
David, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm going to toot my own horn here. If any of my instructors wish to donate or volunteer, I pay for the aircraft and the fuel. I don't know how much that is. I don't bother keeping it in track. And I also volunteer when I can and do the same thing with flights. And I know David volunteers, only I don't offer free airplane rentals to airport commission chairs, so. No matter how good the cause.
Yeah, so I would say, you know, what a typical Cessna 172 to operate is going to be $140 an hour, whether you own it or rent it. So you have to take into account wear and tear on the airplane. Because when the engine gets old, somewhere around, let's say 2,500 hours. That costs $30,000 to replace. So airplane operation is by tenths of an hour. And the pilots just factor that into the ownership and lifespan of the airplane. So no matter what you do, you're paying to fly your airplane, whether you own it or rent it, it's irrelevant. So every pilot that's engaged in like the Wings to Fly event typically flies each kid for about, I'd say anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours. And we had at the last event,
11 kids.
11 kids. So, you know, you're talking minimum 11 hours, somewhere between 11 to 15 hours per pilot. And they're paying for that out of their own pocket. And then of course, Rich clears out his facility and dedicates the room for just that explicit use. And for other events, you even clear out the main hangar, so you can set tables and craft shops up and things, you know, for educational purposes.
Yep, and if I may, David, it's up to about 45,000 for the engines now.
Okay,
Okay, so, and the second part is.
that's depressing.
We also respond, help and do the same thing for the Young Eagles program that is put
Yeah.
on by the Experimental Aircraft Association, which is anyone, I think, yeah, what is it, 8 through 18?
Yeah, 17.
17. They will come along and do that. It's a little bit shorter ride.
Yeah.
The idea is to get a bunch of people through an initial as opposed to a little bit with the Willa. It's an intensive program where they want to get really get more of an experience. But yeah, we do that. And then of course we'll open up for the pancake breakfast, which will be coming up here in July. And so that's in our hangar, and that's a great, really, that's a fundraiser for scholarships. And now Kara's on the board for EAA. She can tell you about the Ray scholarships better than I can. But the EA chapter locally has sponsored, I think, 8 youth at least, whereas some money comes from the national organization and the other comes from local. Young people are getting their pilot's licenses that maybe they couldn't have afforded to do that otherwise. So these scholarships are very meaningful.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking is because I think in telling the story of the airport, it would be helpful for people to understand exactly what it costs to put on all of this charitable programming so that they can better understand the full participation of the airport in our broader Middleton community and the benefits that people who are perhaps not as visible in the community derive from that airport programming. So if we could start tracking that, I'd really appreciate it.
I will ask Ms. Schwab about those numbers, and yes, you're absolutely correct. I tend to be very low key. You know that sometimes we just need to paraphrase Garrison Keillor, the shy people have to have the whatever to do what needs to be done. So.
Yeah, I think, you know, like from a numbers perspective, you think about these events, experimental aircraft giving rides to kids, the Willa Brown Academy, typically 10 pilot volunteers, Each pilot flying anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours. Average cost per hour on some of the airplanes that are substantially larger, be $250 an hour. So anywhere from $150 to $250 an hour, multiply that by 10 pilots flying 10 hours. And there's at least throughout the summer, starting in May, June, July, August, and September, there's anywhere from 1 to 2 of those events per month. So,
Not all at our place though.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it adds up.
Oh, it
Yeah,
it
thank you.
does, and I think it would be
Yeah.
really good to see the total that it adds up to, because it would be quite substantial, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll work on that.
Yes. Thank you for the question. I really appreciate that. Any other questions on Rich's report? Members? Okay. Rich, how we doing with, Mr. Wagner?
Oh,
In following up with him based on our last meeting, there was gonna be a little follow-up and,
I think Larry is content at the moment. He's actually got access to some fill dirt, so I know one of the things he was concerned about was the radius off of the access road, because that's where he pays. So it's possible that he will take care of that on his own, out of his own nickel.
Oh.
He's also burned a couple ditches out there with my permission and with the
Okay,
getting
thank you.
the proper. So I think he's going above and beyond what his contract is with the city to just make sure that that property it produces a reasonable crop of marsh hay or whatever he needs.
yeah,
So-
yeah, no, I think it's important just to acknowledge, looking back through minutes, and you see how often Mr. Wagner's name comes up, and really to have someone who keeps an eye on things and dragged Brian and I out there, and we went for a tour. It was very instructive and nice to see. On one hand, we learned what needs to get done. On the other hand, we also learned, well, what can't be done. So, and hangar inspections.
I've just requested the city to draft a letter
Okay.
that we can we can, and/or the city can mail to all the hangar owners. I'd like to start it mid-July. Last time we did a hangar inspection, we had a representative from the fire department come along and do a free and non-regulatory just audit of the hangars and say, well, maybe you want to have a fire extinguisher in here, or
Oh.
gosh, all of those cords plugged into one thing, just giving ideas and making suggestions. And, wow, that if you do have a fire extinguisher, maybe, that tag's like 10 years old, maybe you should have it inspected, things along those lines. I think as value added, I'd like to have that as well if we can coordinate.
Mhm.
And what we did last time was we simply had slots where we were available, and the hangar owners would call and say, yeah, come on over at 10:15 to try to get a bunch all at one time, and then we try to do it all. So
Okay.
I think that would be very useful. It's part of the contract or the land lease.
Mhm.
So
Well, I like the idea of the fire department involved, and yes, professional set of eyes to say, hey, maybe a little something there.
yeah, and they're not there to write tickets or violations. They're there to be
Be
helpful.
proactive, yeah. Yeah, no, that's the best way to deal with it. It never helps to blame and shame. It's counterproductive, in my opinion, so.
Yeah, I'm
Thank-
hoping that we'll be able to get that going. And I just wanted, the city is a better way of phrasing things necessarily.
Sure, yeah,
And it
no.
should come from the city
Yeah,
rather
yeah,
than
work
me.
with Brian as you see fit.
Okay.
And, okay, we'll move on. Discussion action item number 1, review, discuss, and potential action on behalf of parallel turf operation along the north section of Runway 1028. I'll start off with just a few summary observations. I'll also point out that Mr. Russell is here. And so if, as we engage in this discussion, Brian said it's okay then for him to come up to the podium and answer some questions based on his experience, you know, involved in working in with the FAA in drafting language also along this.
Brian, is Evan online?
Is
Evan Kruger? Yeah, he's our state.
Oh, Evan is here?
He's online, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Um,
thought that would be very useful.
yeah, well, let's do that. We definitely want to hear from Evan. I'll just summarize briefly. So in your packet, what you see in there is Airport Commission meeting minutes from May of 2017, and you see Airport Commission meeting minutes from December of 2019. And, you know, each one of those basically are summarizing the history of it, simply put. You know, some interesting concerns that were raised along the, you know, in that process, everything from Mr. Wagner pointed out, he certainly doesn't want to lose some hay production. You know, like I said, you know, we appreciate his eye to the airport property. But everything from, and noting that, of course, back in 2017, the Airport Commission did vote to approve parallel turf operations as well. So I just wanted to summarize that. And then since, you know, we have Evan here, I would like to just, I think it'd be good, I think it'd be good to get, oh, yes, David.
Just a question. I read those minutes and it seemed that in 2017, it was approved by the Airport Commission. And then in 2019, it seemed it was taken away, and I'm just wondering what transpired. It got us to where we are now.
Exactly.
If I've got a little historical, I don't know, experience with that. I think part of that was John Halleck, who was the airport chair again, he was our first chair. He looked at that and he looked at that time, the advisory circular wasn't, that we didn't have one, at least not for the Wisconsin area. There was something out in Washington State. So the potential of, I think John felt that we had established a runway without FAA approval, without the state approval, without markings and all that and the rest, as opposed to simply being an extension of and/or a landing area. So none of the guidance that's available now was at least accepted and/or available in Wisconsin. So that's why it ended up being shut down. Whether you can argue back and forth whether that was actually a legitimate or necessary thing, but it is a thing. And then, as we know, the people that do want to operate off the grass were operating on the infield, again, at own risk. And I believe, well, that's the way it's been ever since. But now we have, I believe we have new guidance. And so Evan, that's why I asked Evan to be here, because he knows more about that on the state level than I do.
Mhm. Any other questions? Because we could bring Evan on now to get his, call it summary evaluation. Yes, go ahead.
I'll
Yeah.
preemptively ask a
Exactly,
question.
then Evan has more input from us.
Yeah, I did preemptively ask a question of Mr. Russell, actually. In your estimation,
Oh, Jeff, yeah, go up to the mic.
Jeff, in that area north of the runway that would be the turf operations, is there anything that you see would need to be done from a grounds standpoint for that to be operable?
Initially or minimally, just mow it like it was being mowed in the past. Just start mowing it again. That would be all it would need. Ideally, it is low. There are a few times during the year, you know, it's obviously it's not an area that's used in winter, snow. But there are times of the year where it's low enough that it does accumulate some water, and so it's not usable during wet periods. So ideally, down the road, if it would be possible, you could bring some fill in, bring the grade up a little bit and make it usable more times of the year. But that's a nice to have, that's
Mhm.
down. I mean,
Right.
it's perfectly usable now as long as you have to, at your own risk. And be aware that it can be wet at times. And if it's wet, you don't have the proper size tires or whatever, don't use it. And that's kind of how it went for years until the whole issue kind of came up.
Thank you.
Any other question?
Now you got me thinking way ahead, but, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh, at some point we'll have to do some dredging out there. And you gotta put the dredge material somewhere. And it's great for, reseeding and, cause I've seen it done in our parks around the city.
So dredging in like 6 Mile Creek or wherever. It's at?
Yeah, like in creek areas where we've done dredging, at some of our parks in the area where the retention ponds are. And they brought it all up and then they laid it out and flat and they reseeded it. And you got like, now you got these soccer fields that are actually has a little higher grade and then you don't have the water in them. So long-term, just thinking, note to self.
Yeah, perfect. I mean, dredging is perfect.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Sorry, Charles.
Yeah, I'm going to ask a question where I'm pretty sure I know the answer, and you can all think less of me for asking it. I'm just a guy who doesn't fly and represents this district on city council, but pilots who choose to land on this hypothetical strip will be able to fly the voluntary noise abatement pattern on their approach, conditions permitting, correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Great.
It's a lateral extension of the existing runway. So all the same procedures apply to that runway. So it's good, really good question. So, and it just to add to, and I know you didn't ask this, but it's no simultaneous operation. So if you're on that portion of this extension of the runway, it's not like you're a separate runway, it's the same runway. So single airplane operations at that per se.
Okay, thank you. I just didn't know the capabilities of grass landing aircraft or if that might change anything, so I wanted to ask.
Yeah, great question. Anything else?
Do we have any other questions we'd like to get out there and then Evan can hear them and then bring him online? No, I guess then what I would say, Evan, is yes, we had turf operations, parallel turf operations, and then we stopped parallel turf operations. From your perspective, can we simply resume parallel turf operations?
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to see, can everyone hear me okay?
It's not bad.
Wonderful. Appreciate the opportunity inviting me to the commission meeting tonight to talk. I'll just do a real brief introduction. My name is Evan Kruger. I'm a project manager with Wisconsin DOT, the Bureau of Aeronautics. I'm new to the Maury Airport in this role, taking over for Angus Pinkerton. As he kind of goes to a new opportunity. However, been a pilot in the Madison area for the past 6 or 7 years or so. So familiar with at least flying in and out of Maury. To answer your question, Dave, is it something that you can continue the off pavement operations, or it's got a number of different names, right? Diverse aeronautical activities, things like that. I want to kind of address Rich's comment in the sense that in 2017 there wasn't really good guidance, and you are correct on that, Rich. This change to the advisory circular, and this is the airport design advisory circular, came out in 2022. So this is relatively new, and just want to thank Jeff and the RAF for their very hard work. Getting something like this recognized by the FAA was certainly no small task. So that's fantastic that there's visibility to this. In looking through the advisory circular and in the guidance when it talks about diverse aeronautical activities on airports, this is kind of a nice common sense approach by the FAA. To sum it up, they basically say, listen, we understand that, every airplane is a little bit different, not to mention balloons, gliders, weight shift, control airplanes, airships, things like that, all require something a little bit different. And we recognize that there are a lot of different activities that can occur on the airport. What this section and advisory circular kind of does is it says you can make accommodations for those diverse aeronautical activities, and goes as far as to say or to point out tailwheel aircraft, tundra or aircraft equipped with tundra tires, etc. And it has a section that specifically says aircraft operations in the unpaved runway safety area. It doesn't prohibit it. The only really consideration that it puts in there is it says if you want to do this, a couple things to think about. The best thing you could possibly do would be to actually mark a turf runway and install a turf runway. That's the absolute best thing you can do. However, most people can recognize that that is not just a very simple undertaking. It is not go out there, set out cones that, requires clearing of airspace, protecting approaches, changing grading in a lot of different cases. So it does go on to say, while that's the absolute best thing you can do, it may not be practical. It points out kind of two things to consider. One is the AIP sponsor grant assurance number 19 that talks about making sure that the airport is in a safe and serviceable condition. And it kind of goes on to say, just because you allow off-turf operations does not make it an unsafe or unserviceable condition. And then the last thing that can trip people up a little bit is there's a section that talks about coordination with the FSDO as part of addressing safety concerns. And reading through, my interpretation is it talks about the safety aspect of it needs to be addressed. If you're not comfortable addressing it, the FSDO may be available to help you out. It certainly doesn't require coordination with the FSDO. It just talks about if you need an additional resource, they might be available to you. For those of us who are pilots, we know that sometimes that can be a little bit tricky. And certainly no one knows an airport like the local pilots, the airport manager, the city. In my opinion, in this specific case, I would think that the local community can make that safety determination. When we're looking at different factors at other airports, this might not be the case, but I'm at least of the opinion that a safety determination can be easily made at the local level.
Evan, this is Richard Morey. Thanks for joining us. I just have a couple questions. The first one is, do we have to put this on the master plan if we want to designate this, or is this something that doesn't have to be?
Great question, Rich. This is not something that needs to be shown on the master plan. This is not a marked runway. This is not a marked improvement. This is really simply just kind of a locally designated area.
Excellent.
If I may ask, which advisory circular is this?
Great question. This is Advisory Circular 150/5300. The most recent flavor is 13B as in Bravo.
Specifically pages 55 through 56. Section
You got it.
10.6.
I'm writing it down.
Mhm.
Printed for your convenience. Thank you very much, Evan. Does anybody else have any other questions for Evan? So Evan hit exactly what I was concerned about, was section 2.10.6.3. Which states AIP airport sponsor grant assurances 19 requires the owner of an airport developed with obviously federal grant assistance, refer to that section, that an airport with operations in an RSA adjacent to the runway pavement may need to assess the operational safety implications and assistance from the FAA to ensure an acceptable level of safety. So it sounds like we're essentially doing that. Or I should say, Rich
We
is,
could.
yeah.
We could do.
So I
My
guess,
sorry, my opinion of that is when we're looking at a runway with a non-standard RSA, think about a runway that maybe has a steeper grade than the 1.5% established by the airport design AC. I think that, in my opinion, that would be a situation of we need to weigh this in the sense that we've kind of got a steeper slope than what is standard. However, certainly in Middleton Maury's case, my opinion is that the safety threshold can be evaluated at your level.
gotcha.
Mhm.
So if the commission tonight wanted to really, I guess it would be, we would be making a recommendation to the airport, or giving the manager direction to assess the area, mow the grass, and simply leave it at that, because we can't mark it. It's not something that would go into any kind of publication. And we wouldn't be putting cones or markers out based on the guidance tonight, because if we started going down that road, then we're going down the road of where it has to be an identifiable surface. So, and the reason I'm saying that question was brought up by the person who brought this to the agenda tonight. Said, well, hey, it would be nice to have cones, markers, something demarcating the runway. But it sounds like if we don't do that, but we mow it and the people locally know that it's there, they can use it. But if we want to make it really formal, then it might make it difficult for us to achieve that goal. Does that sound about right, Evan?
Yeah, yes, it does. This has come up at a couple other airports that I'm currently working with in my role. And one thing that will come up is when we decide to maybe mark an off, a kind of a turf runway in the RSA. We have to go back and remember that the requirement for the runway safety area is that there are no objects in that area unless they absolutely need to be there. For example, runway lights, correct? So sometimes that can kind of run into conflicts with the main runway. Are they, even if they're frangible, right, as is required, the question comes up, is it absolutely necessary to have these objects in that area?
Right, which we have runway lights. So, okay. Charles.
I just, I have one more question, for Evan, if he's still on.
Absolutely.
So if we were to establish this, could you, walk me through some of the safety benefits that it might offer to pilots who choose to use it over the existing grass runway, and the conditions that might cause them to choose to use this landing strip?
Certainly. That's a great question. I'm actually going to defer to either Jeff or Rich on this one. I've got a whopping 4 hours and a tail wheel. So this is certainly not my area of expertise. However, depending on the type of aircraft, tail wheels specifically, and depending on configuration, things like that, a turf runway can offer a much larger margin of safety. And while you might think that the existing turf runway would be able to support that, you also have to weigh that with prevailing winds. So there's kind of a lot of moving pieces to it. I would kind of defer to Rich and or Jeff on that one. They certainly know that kind of flying much better than I do. However, from a safety standpoint, safety is of the utmost importance. It's paramount. I want to make sure that we're offering a number of options for pilots to make sure that their operation is as safe as possible.
Well, I can address that to a certain extent, although Jeff has a heck of a lot more tailwheel time than I do. When I was teaching in a cub, I would not go with a student on anything but a grass runway. A conventional geared aircraft, a tailwheel aircraft, has its center of gravity behind the main wheels, whereas a tricycle gear has a center of gravity in front. Now, if you land a tricycle gear pointed in not the direction it's flying, it straightens itself automatically or mostly, and it causes wear and tear on my tires. If you try to do that with a tailwheel aircraft on a paved runway especially, you could easily have that weight of which is behind the main wheels cause the aircraft to slew, potentially damaging the aircraft. And this is called a ground loop. It's very, unfortunately, fairly common. Now, grass runways are far more forgiving. If nothing else, even if you're slightly off, they're not going to grip that tire as quickly as a paved runway. Also, with the tail wheel, that adds a lot of drag, which tends to be like a rudder and or an anchor, and straightens that airplane out. So the grass runway, typically speaking, they're softer, they're far more forgiving. And a tailwheel aircraft is romantic, it's neat, it's from back in the day. It has some performance issues, or not issues, advantages, yet it is a more challenging aircraft to land. So it was designed for turf, it always was. And by having that, we have the grass runway on the north-south, a strong east or west wind, that adds even more complexity when you're working with the tailwheel aircraft. So being able to land into the wind is important. Let's put it that way. Jeff, I'll defer to you. Did I do that okay?
Rich, I mean, excellent. I don't really have much to add to that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's forgiving. You know, when the tires come down, if you're a little crooked, touches down on the grass.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, it's a forgiving service, right? It's just safer for tailwheel aircraft. Especially, one of the other operators at the airport, Capital Flight, they teach a lot of tailwheel. So now you have a student not very familiar with tailwheel aircraft, and this is the most vulnerable time, or maybe a ground occur. So by teaching them, Rich said, turf versus pavement, just so much better. It's safer, you're not gonna damage the aircraft, you're gonna keep the challenge kind of at the same level as the student, and not overwhelm them. So, that answer?
It does, but just for the clarity of anyone watching, could you explain exactly what happens in a ground loop in just very plain language and the risk of injury or worse to the person who is experiencing it?
It's really not an injury issue with the ground loop. It can be, but also it just depends on the airplane. It's an expensive issue. So when you think of a loop with an airplane, you immediately think of doing a loop in the air. The ground loop is actually horizontal. It's just like a car skidding up, right? And so if you land crooked, as Rich mentioned earlier, in a tail dragger or tailwheel aircraft, also known as conventional gear, just to confuse you, the center of gravity is behind you, and all of a sudden it wants to get you around too. And that action makes kind of a skidding turn and becomes an out of control situation. A lot of times what happens is during that violent turn, a wing will dip down to the runway and scrape. Worst case condition, the wing bends. A worst case condition yet, it's so violent that the wheel and the gear folds up underneath the airplane because it can't handle the sideways force. And then the propeller comes down and hits this propeller, engine stop, and now you're gonna have and it happens. And unfortunately, it happens too often. But turf really mitigates, really helps that risk with that risk.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Rich. And thank you.
Good question.
Appreciate it.
Now, if I may make a suggestion, Evan, I want to bounce this one off you. What I'd like to do is maybe do an assessment of that area. It's been 5-7 years since it's been used. And I would suggest to keep our farmer Larry happy, Mr. Wagner, we wait until he mows the hay, which will be shortly. It'll be July 15th or so is when we do the cropping on most of that. And then do an assessment, get I'm not sure how long it is. Have to look at what a recommendation would be for width and also access. There is, as you know, there's some slope on some of that going up to the runway. We'd have to try to identify, and it'll be only a very few people that are using it, but at least have something where you're a lot flatter than the coming up and onto the runway. Just run through the full safety of that and probably bring that back to the airport commission at that time with the report, and then we can make a decision. I think the people at the moment, the people that need to land on the grass have a surface that they're using, and in those cases, so it's not an urgent thing. I'd rather err a little on the side of caution, make sure all of our I's are crossed and our T's are dotted or something like that, and get it right.
And there's one question, this would be north of 1028 or in the
Yeah.
infield
It'll
between?
be north of 1028, and there's a section east of the Pheasant Branch Creek going under and west of the grass runway. That's fairly flat, and that was used back when the biplane, when Ted was here with the biplane, that was used there. I think he bribed the line guys to mow it wide for him. So,
Okay.
yes, Carl.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment that I have an aircraft on the airport. Charles, this is mainly just to support you and your constituents who may have questions. And I've observed the tailwheel pilots in the small area that they have in between the taxiway and the runway. And it's impressive. The skill level of the pilots that are likely the ones that'll keep using it are very safe. They're passionate about safety, and the landings have been amazing, and just it's actually kind of beautiful to watch. It's motivating for those of us who don't have that experience to want to be able in these traditional aircraft to do that. So I just believe in Jeff Russell and the rest of the group of working hard. Safety is definitely first, and this would absolutely increase that for them and anybody else visiting to the area.
Thank you. Appreciate you sharing your knowledge and experience.
David?
I'm just curious, if even though it's not a formalized runway, as we've discussed, what is the intent of basically the integrity and makeup of the runway compared to 0119 or turf that currently exists as our turf?
Well, I think Jeff pointed that out. One, it'll be narrower. Two, it has a tendency to be unusable when there's a lot of rain. Whereas 119 was engineered with a minimum amount of topsoil, a lot of sand underneath it. It drains beautifully. There are times when it is soft, when the frost is coming out of the ground, but honestly, it's one of the best grass runways I've ever seen, short of the sand country where everything drains so nicely. So those would be the considerations. And honestly, none of my rental airplanes will ever use that section. It's just going to be too specialized. You need an aircraft that has short field capability to be able to operate out of something like that.
Yeah, and that's what I thought I was hearing, but it's one of clarify.
So we don't really need a motion tonight. It would be our instruction. Instruction to Rich?
You could give a motion of instruction to Rich to tell him, after the conclusion of the mowing season on July 15th, to conduct an assessment of the property and report back to the airport commission on his findings.
Okay. All right. So the motion before you is as Brian Gatto just stated. Did everybody hear that clearly? Okay. No reason for me to reread it. If there are any more questions, then I will put the motion in front of us. Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Randall. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great. So then, at August will be our, we'll make a decision in August. Doesn't require common council.
I don't believe so.
Okay. It's just, this is an operational element of the airport, no financial impact, no city policy ordinance, none of that. So it's just basically the city as a body having the comfort to move ahead with it. Okay. Thanks. Mr. Russell, thank you for your time. We'll keep you posted and we appreciate all of your information.
You're very welcome. Happy to contribute.
Okay, on to item number 2. Review discussion of potential action on an application for EV charging station at the Middleton Airport parking lot to the Charge Up Dane County program. Information is there in the packet. This was brought to the Common Council as a broad piece of information to look at the complete city of Middleton. I certainly see EV vehicles sitting in our parking lot on a regular basis. So I thought, well, why not find out? And Brian, you have the details. Take it away.
Yeah, just a couple other things to note beyond what I'd included in the memo. So this is a grant program that's run by Dane County. The city would put together kind of an application that encompasses a number of locations. So if the motion from the commission tonight is to proceed, we would include the parking lot area in the city's full-blown application. My understanding from talking with our sustainability coordinator is that if approved, what it would mean is we would get access to two-sided chargers, meaning 4 chargers in total. So basically there'd be 4 parking stalls that would have access to the EV chargers if we awarded this particular site as one of our sites for this. They have to be publicly available, based upon whatever mechanism that MGE and the county use for charging. But that's pretty much what we know about the program as it is today.
Yeah, so I guess my first question would be to Rich, who has the most history and understanding what goes on out there. We would be giving up some parking spaces.
Well, I think, David, as you pointed out, there are a number of people that are driving either plug-in hybrids or EVs, and they park there anyway. If they're gonna, I don't know if you can, how much charge you can get on an 1.5-hour lesson, but they could plug something in while they're doing their flying and then come on back. I don't think that that would be an issue. We could easily place them over in that area where the rental cars used to be, which we no longer have. We used to keep up to 3 or 4 rental cars out there. I don't see the parking, the loss of a couple stalls is that important relative to the need for charging.
And Brian, my question is, do we get any, does the city get revenue from the charging itself? Or is it just county says, hey, we'll put them in, we'll pay for all of it. Obviously, the people who plug in have to pay a fee for the electricity. Other than a feel good, do we get anything out of it?
I believe the way you laid it out is the way it is. I'll verify that with Dane County, but I don't believe there's a revenue component that comes back to the city for this.
Yeah. Obviously, if there was revenue, it would go to the Airport Enterprise Fund, correct? And obviously, if there was an expense to be borne by this, would we be able to establish that the Airport Enterprise Fund would not be accountable for that and the city would take that from a general fund?
I mean, I think you could kind of establish that as your motion if you were to make one this evening. Again, once we make an application and if we are successful, we'll get some more details back from the county in terms of the logistics of the implementation, if there is any cost to the municipalities themselves, or if it's solely borne by the grant that the county has in hand.
And I would also imagine at some point in the life of this whole infrastructure system, the chargers wear out
Mhm.
and they have to be replaced. Is it like, when the county gave us money, say to do, our bike paths and that kind of infrastructure, now they say, okay, now you, City of Middleton, are responsible for maintaining it moving forward 5, 10 years down the road. Do you know what will be there?
Yeah, I'd have to look at the, see if they have that in their program grant application materials. But yeah, that typically is when we accept a grant for something like DNR or county. Once the grant funds have been expended, the municipality has, ownership or maintenance, ownership or operations of the asset, then we're responsible for replacement long term.
Mhm. Charles?
So, for the end of the, when we are dealing with the county for this, can we please confirm that at the end of the 5-year period, regardless of whether or not we're allowed to charge a premium on top of the excise tax coverage and electricity costs in the initial 5-year period, but at the end of the 5-year period, can we confirm that we will be able to charge a premium into the airport enterprise fund? And do we know, I think you asked this question as well, what is the useful life of a level 2 charger?
Yeah, I can't speak to that. I don't know.
Some idea of that. And then I see in the requirements for site hosts, EV owners will pay a fee for charging, but not a separate fee for parking. I know that we don't charge that fee right now at the airport to begin with, but we should probably figure out if any of the signage that we have about if there is any signage about the parking lot being for airport users, or any restrictions to access to the parking lot.
Oh, that's a good point, because I think this says we can't limit who gets to use the charger. So you could be hypothetically nearby the airport and know that the airport's there, and to say, well, I'm gonna plug my car in there and I'm gonna walk over a block into wherever to do some business in the industrial park or up the road. We would have to allow them with the vehicle there.
Yeah, that's a good point. People were storing their vehicles and trailers in the parking lot. And the police department suggested that we put the signage up that this is for airport use only, so that we could actually have a legal basis to have them, don't leave your whatever stored there. I don't know if we can make an exception on that for the EV stations or how that would be working, but yeah, I think largely that those signs are ignored anyway. There's a lot of park and ride out of Maury there at Middleton Municipal, which is fine if they move their car the next day. But if something's stored there, we don't know who it is, we get snow, it's a real problem. So.
Yeah, I just think we should probably firm up our answer on that before we apply for the grant, because it might present logistical issues for us.
Well, timing is of the essence. The application deadline's the 13th. So I think that's a question we could address with the county, in a parallel process, but we wouldn't have enough time to get that response before the application would need to be submitted.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Couple of comments. Typically, I own an EV. I don't think I've ever been at a charging station that doesn't have very clear signage that says you're parked there, you're charging, and if you're not charging, you're not parked there.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's number one. Number two, if you charge to a certain, whatever level you charge to, when you're done charging, if you keep it plugged in, your rate jumps up significantly.
Oh,
MG&E or whoever owns the unit, it controls that.
Oh,
Third item, a level 2 charger out at Maury. I think the use that you came up with, Rich, is a good one in terms of someone coming in for a lesson or something, but in terms of people coming out here to charge at a level 2 charger, I don't think that that's a big concern. I don't think that it's every time I come out to the airport, I drive by Ford, which has several level 2 chargers that I've never seen anybody hooked up to. Level 2 chargers just aren't popular because they're so slow. But lastly, I would say I think it's a good idea in the sense that over the past few years, we've had several people come to this meeting and under public comment, address and ask us, gee, you ought to get some EV chargers here. So just from a public relations standpoint, if nothing else, I think it's a good.
yeah, yeah. So let's, how do you want to wrap this up, Brian? Obviously, I guess conditions would be, we're concerned about enterprise fund. The city would be financially responsible for this, not the enterprise fund, because this is a broader initiative for the city.
Mhm.
I think the issues regarding parking or no parking,
That can be a parallel process.
yeah, let's not let that get in the way.
Yeah, so I think the motion would be to recommend inclusion of the Middleton Municipal Airport parking lot in the city's Charge Up Dane County EV application with the caveat that any costs associated with the installation of the EV chargers would be borne by the city in the same manner as any other charging stations we would be awarded.
And any future.
Yep, in any future maintenance or operational costs.
Okay. I'm not going to restate that. Brian said it for the record. It's recorded. Would anybody like to make that motion? I'm happy to make the motion.
I'll make that motion if you're not going to.
Thank you. Motion is made by Charles Myers. Would anybody like to second that motion?
I'll second it.
Seconded by David Schwartz. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Great. Ayes have it. Thank you. Discussion and consideration of potential mission and vision for the airport business development and related comprehensive plan sections. And of course, that is in the agenda packet. There was, and this was just an error on my part. The draft that I sent Brian was missing, we'll call it section F. And maybe Brian has it and I can throw it up there. Okay, so starting at the top of it, you'll see in red, go back up at the top, Brian. And I integrated some language in there that was, go back to A. From our last meeting, Charles brought that up. There we go. As did Commissioner Young. So I tried to put something in there to make a distinction between some of the uses and just get that message there. Not really fundamentally changing, obviously, our intent, but clarifying it a little bit. And then Charles talked about making sure that the city always communicate what is going on at the airport, especially public events, so on and so forth. And again, by integrating this into the city master plan, this is basically a very high level message to the community and to the city. Hey, these are a basic framework that we want to look at the airport as. So, if there's anything minor, I think at this point, Brian can sort that out between Brian and me, and we probably wouldn't have to bring it back here. But is there any discussion? I'd like to hear from you all.
Actually, Brian, could you bring section F up again?
And that's in a Word document, so Brian can
Yeah.
make some notes.
So after utilize all communication resources at its disposal to, I just want to put in, tell the story of the airport
Sure.
and, or airport, which may include, and then the list, corrected for grammar.
Chip? Thank you.
So promotion of the airport as a facility, open to the aviation community and the public. Then to raise awareness about, and, so promotion of, the airport. Oop. Sorry, I'm not great at, editing on the fly like this. Of the airport as a facility open to the aviation community and to the public.
Mhm.
For aviation, and to, or maybe not and, I'm not sure.
Raising awareness.
Yeah,
Yeah, right. Take it to
and raising awareness about the airport activities, or actually strike and raising awareness about airport activities, and then add an and. So before raising, strike and then at the end of that sentence, add a comma. And community and charitable activities involved, engaged in. By the users of the airport and the entity that is the airport. So I guess that would be the airport enterprise.
City will utilize all communication resources at its disposal to tell the story of the airport, which may include promotion of the airport as a facility open to the aviation community and to the public for aviation, raising awareness about the airport activities and community and charitable activities engaged in by the users of the airport and airport enterprise. The airport has a long history of community service, aviation, offering education, seminars. Great.
Actually, I just want to say, which may include but not be limited to. I want to, so, yeah, which may include but not, but yeah, but is not limited to.
Might suggest in the first line, after the word airport, you put a period there and start a new sentence.
Yes,
Instead of which may include, maybe this may include.
yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, I think that, are you saying put a comma after include?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, and Mark Opitz is retiring.
Where did that come from?
Well, I remember Mark, put Mark through this. He'd sit there and we'd be writing everything in during the meeting. And he really liked doing that. I mean, he really did like doing it.
Bulky, that second sentence is
Yeah.
bulky.
Yeah.
We gotta break the second
And
sentence.
there'd be a pun, Brian.
It's not my game.
Yeah, it's not my area either.
Promotion of the airport as a facility open to the aviation.
How about if we eliminate the word to in front of the public for aviation, so just read the aviation. community and the public.
Yes,
For aviation.
thereby raising awareness, or is that just too wordy?
Yeah.
Yeah, just,
Okay. We don't need
Yeah,
to add
so-
more.
so striking for aviation at the end of that clause? Or was that?
I wonder, yeah, I wonder about that. It could,
Good.
but let's see.
Well, we currently have Girl Scout troops meeting there from.
And
the-
garden clubs.
And garden
and
club, yeah,
garden
yeah,
clubs,
good.
So,
You could eliminate.
Boy Scouts,
And Boy Scouts, that's right.
neighborhood organization,
Yeah, we do.
associations.
We have CPR classes there.
Raising awareness about the airport, comma, community and charitable activities. Or is that two distinct concepts? Raising awareness about the airport, comma, community and charitable activities. I just want, is that two concepts you're trying to convey there?
yeah, I think they're related enough to be included in the same clause, because breaking them out would require additional words. And the airport engages in community and charitable activities. Its users engage in community and charitable activities. So I think we can keep them together without making it more bulky.
Yeah, just trying to shorten that sentence.
Mhm.
Does it help at all? Raising awareness about the airport activities and community and charitable activities engaged in at the airport, period.
I love that. Let's do that.
All right. And this will be going to another committee for scrutinization.
And it would probably be marked up there too.
Oh, yes.
So just a point of information for the body. So if you were to move this forward, that the motion I'd recommend is to forward this on to the city planning staff for incorporation in their comprehensive plan update process with review by the plan commission.
Yep. Yep, our stand is the same motion as at our last meeting. So unless, of course, we want to keep reviewing this.
I can have one more stab at this. So it's just bothering me from the raising awareness part,
Sure, of course. Yeah, yeah. No,
raising awareness
fix it,
about,
fix it now.
raising awareness about airport, comma, community and charitable activities engaged in at the airport. See how that feels. Are activities engaged in, or that's the, it's the verbiage of engaged in,
Raising awareness about the airport, community.
about airport.
Thing is,
community, and
I mean,
charitable activities.
Does the word community need to be there?
I think it probably does because those are
Yeah.
different than charitable activities.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I guess if,
so something other than engaged in.
Well, it can just be,
which-
it can just be charitable activities. Because that is what's going on there.
yeah,
So you could take engaged simply out. Like,
Yeah.
like David said, less words.
yep.
This may include, but not limited to, promotion of the airport as a facility open to the aviation community and public. Yep, makes sense. Raising awareness about airport, raising awareness about the airport, community and charitable activities at the airport.
I think you're talking about airport activities, not raising awareness about the airport.
Yep, raising awareness about,
Yeah, I think to clean this up, an and ahead of raising since it's a list.
Hmm.
Because that last clause is all just one list point.
Mhm.
Even if it is in the form of a list itself. Let's see how
May
that,
include but not limited to promotion of the airport as a facility open to the aviation community and the public. And raising awareness about airport. That doesn't sound right, about airport. It has to be about the airport.
about the airport, yeah.
Almost break it into two sentences and start with,
Yeah, how about if we put a period
After
after the word
public.
public? Start a new sentence.
Okay. So,
Instead of the word and, maybe thereby raising
Mhm.
awareness about the airport community and charitable activities at the airport.
yeah,
I mean, if we want to get really messy, we can just put a semicolon there and make the thereby lowercase followed by a comma, but
this works.
this is.
okay,
That document is for the city and the elected officials. So when we look at it, we always bring ourselves back to where we're supposed to be at. And so the public can remind us
yeah.
of what our obligation is.
Communicates.
Has anybody read the whole document? Oh, Charles. All right. That looks good. Brian, hit the save button. All right, restate that motion, please.
The motion would be to forward on this draft to the planning staff for incorporation in the comprehensive plan update process with review by the planning commission.
All right, I'll make that motion. Do we have a second? Seconded by David Schaefer. Ford. I keep thinking John Schaefer sits there. And I've been mistaken with John. John's been mistaken with me. It's a long day. Sorry. I know who you are, David. I can call Kara Smith or someone else, Kara Madden. Okay, thank you. And let's take a vote on that. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, yes,
Request a 5-minute recess for members to attend to personal needs.
sure, absolutely. I would like to take a 5-minute recess for personal needs. Do we need to vote on that, Brian?
Just get by unanimous consent, I think you can.
Unanimous consent, okay. All right, 5 minutes.